Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a really compelling statement, look at all the different angles, all the sources, and really try to figure out what's going on underneath. Today, we're digging into a philosophy that honestly sounds incredibly freeing, maybe even a bit radical. The core idea is everybody is right as per their own understanding. But, and here's the twist, it sits right alongside this other idea. The universe's rules are fixed and always right. So how do those fit together? Think about your own life, maybe. Are you, the type who sets that 5 a.m. alarm ready to go? Or maybe you just wake up when you wake up. This philosophy says, well, both are okay. Both are right for that person. Same with social media. Maybe you're all in, crafting your presence. Or maybe you've completely cut it off. According to this view, you're both right in your own way. It feels really personal, validating your choices. But then there's the second part, just as powerful. It says, everybody deserves everything the universe has to offer. Wow, right. That's a huge promise. But crucially, there's a condition. It hinges on whether you're actually ready to accept what the universe gives. And importantly, if you've done the hard work needed. So our mission today, we're going on a bit of a journey. We'll look at historical parallels, philosophical roots. We'll explore the psychology, the sociology behind it, and then really critically we'll test its coherence. Does it hold up? What are the practical implications? The goal is to help you, our listener, really get what this powerful statement means, its strengths, and, well, where it might stumble in the real world. Let's get into it. So this core statement, it's fascinating because it really does blend two ideas that seem almost opposite, doesn't it? You've got this radical personal truth, this relativism, where your view is valid for you. And then, boom, you have this unchanging universe. Fixed rules, abundant, sort of like a cosmic anchor. How do you see those working together?
That tension, that's exactly where it gets interesting. The first part, the relativism, well, we see that everywhere in daily life, right? The source uses those great examples, the alarm clock. Those who set an alarm are right, and those who don't are also right. Simple, relatable. And it works for bigger choices, too, like social media engagement. It's about personal validity. My way isn't the only way. In these personal choices, maybe there's no single wrong.
Right. So it really emphasizes my unique understanding. My path feels right to me, even if yours looks totally different. But then there's this backdrop, the universal principle.
Exactly. That's the universe's fixed rules. It's the constant stage, you could say, where our personal truths play out. Like the source says, nature is constant. Sun rises, sun sets, water flows. It implies that while our judgments, our social norms, they can be superfluid, very personal. The underlying cosmic reality, that's different. It's fixed. The universe, in this view, it isn't judging your alarm habit. It just is. It offers this kind of neutral objectivity.
Which brings us to that really interesting deserving clause. It's not just like, hey, universe, give me stuff, is it? Everybody deserves everything. But with those specific conditions, it really asks you, have you done the hard work? Do you deserve your best want?
Yeah, it puts the responsibility squarely back on the individual. You have to prepare yourself, align yourself, maybe even earn it. It's a very active kind of deserving, not passive at all.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. This idea, everyone is right in their own understanding, it feels very current, maybe even a bit Instagram philosophy-like sometimes. But you're saying its roots go way back, especially in the East.
Or absolutely. Ancient wisdom traditions have wrestled with this for centuries. Think about Jainism, for example. They have this concept called anekantavada.
Anekantavada.
Yeah, it literally means the doctrine of many-sided truth. The Jains believed that ultimate reality is just incredibly complex, multifaceted, so complex that no single viewpoint could ever possibly grasp the whole thing. You probably know the famous parable, right? The blind man and the elephant.
Oh, yeah. Each one touches a different part, the leg, the trunk, the ear, and thinks that's the elephant.
Exactly. And each description is right based on their limited experience, but none of them have the full picture.
So it's not about the absolute truth, but acknowledging that everyone's perspective holds a valid piece of a bigger puzzle. That really clicks with our statement.
Precisely. It fosters this deep intellectual humility. And you see similar ideas in Hinduism and Buddhism, too. In Hinduism, there's that beautiful saying, truth is one, but the sages call it by many names. It acknowledges multiple valid paths to the same ultimate reality. Gandhi later popularized a related idea, sarvadharma, basically, equal respect for all religions or paths. Your path, your understanding can be right for you without making someone else's wrong.
And Buddhism, how does it handle individual perspective?
Well, Buddhism, especially in Mahayana traditions, talks about two truths. There's ultimate truth, and then there's conventional truth. Our everyday reality, conventional truth, is very much dependent on perspective and context. The Buddha himself was known for using skillful means, tailoring his teachings to who he was talking to. So what was right or helpful for one person might be explained differently for someone else. Now, Buddhism definitely distinguishes between actions that are helpful and unhelpful, wholesome and unwholesome, but there's also a huge emphasis on understanding why people act the way they do, the causes and conditions.
Interesting. And Taoism, you mentioned that connects to the universe is unjudging part.
Definitely. If you read the Zhuangzi, the classic Taoist text, it's filled with challenges to our neat little categories. Zhuangzi argued that things like right and wrong aren't fixed absolutes. They arise from our human viewpoints. What one person finds beautiful, another finds ugly. Right. The core idea in Taoism is to align with the natural flow of things, the Tao, rather than imposing rigid human rules. This fits perfectly with the idea of the universe being constant sunrises, water flows, while our human ideas are much more fluid. The universe just is, kind of embracing all our different understandings equally.
It's really powerful seeing how these Eastern traditions all seem to point towards tolerance, towards understanding that different perspectives can hold their own validity. It really encourages humility. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because this isn't just an Eastern thing, is it? Western thought has grappled with truth and rightness in some surprisingly similar ways. Where do we start there?
Oh, we can go way back. Ancient Greece, the Sophists. Remember Protagoras, his famous line, "Man is the measure of all things."
Right, the idea that truth is relative to the individual.
Exactly. It's one of the earliest clear statements of moral relativism in the West. The idea that moral judgments aren't objectively true or false, but only relative to a standpoint, maybe an individual, maybe a culture. No single standard is inherently superior, like that quote you found earlier from Vikram Wadkar. Everyone is born with their own thoughts and aims which are right for them. We can't say anyone is wrong. That's a direct echo. It ties right into we have no right to prove others wrong.
So my perspective defines my truth, not some external universal card.
Pretty much. Then jump forward centuries to Nietzsche in the 19th century. He introduces Perspectivism. Nietzsche basically argued there are no absolute facts, no God's eye view of reality. All knowledge comes from a specific perspective.
There are no facts, only interpretations. That's his line, right?
That's the one. For Nietzsche, your truth reflects your values, your interests, your will to power, as he put it. He wasn't saying all claims are equally factually true, but that no single viewpoint could claim absolute final truth over all others.
And then the 20th century kind of blew this wide open, didn't it? Postmodernism.
It sure did. Postmodernism took this relativism and applied it across the board: knowledge, morality, culture. It often gets boiled down to that popular phrase, maybe oversimplified: there is no absolute truth. Everyone is right in their own way. Now, serious postmodern thinkers have more nuanced views about how truth is socially constructed, but the cultural impact has definitely been towards this kind of non-judgmental pluralism. You hear it all the time. Don't judge, that's just their truth.
It's amazing how these ideas keep circling back and evolving. Any more recent thinkers who pick up the thread?
Yeah, for a really contemporary angle, look at Ken Wilber and his integral theory. He's very direct about it. Wilber actually says, I have one major rule. Everybody is right. More specifically, everybody, including me, has some important pieces of the truth. And all of those pieces need to be honored, cherished, and included.
Wow, everybody is right as a major rule.
Yeah, but notice the nuance. He's not saying every opinion is fully correct. He's saying every perspective holds a partial truth. His whole thing is about integrating these partial truths, not dismissing viewpoints as completely wrong. This aligns really well with a charitable reading of our statement, seeing the validity in each person's standpoint.
So from the Sophists questioning objective morals, to Nietzsche on interpretation, postmodernism on grand narratives, and Wilber trying to integrate it all, Western thought offers a lot of support for the idea that validity is relative, challenging that single universal truth idea.
And what's really fascinating here is how our original statement manages to hold both things at once: that personal subjective truth and this larger unchanging reality of the universe itself. This gets us into some deep waters, like philosophical determinism and natural order.
It sounds almost like a sophisticated way of saying it is what it is, like a deep acceptance.
You nailed it. Philosophical determinism, broadly speaking, is the idea that everything that happens, including our choices, our actions, is determined by prior causes and these fixed rules of the universe. If you take a strong deterministic view, you might think, well, given someone's background, their experiences, their biology even, they couldn't really have acted differently. And that can lead to a kind of universal understanding, maybe even compassion. Think of Spinoza back in the 17th century. He wrote something like, I have striven not to laugh at human actions, not to weep, nor hate them, but to understand them. He saw everything, including us, as just flowing from nature's necessity. It echoes that fixed, almost amoral cosmic reality.
So instead of judging someone as wrong, you try to understand the maybe inevitable causes behind their actions. It shifts judgment towards curiosity.
Exactly. And Stoicism offers a similar perspective. The Stoics believed the universe was governed by logos, this inherent rational order. For them, wisdom meant accepting external events, knowing what you can control and what you can't. They wouldn't say everyone's actions are morally right, but they saw natural events, cold, heat, rain, as just being, neither good nor bad. And they often saw vice, or bad actions, as coming from ignorance. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic, noted that when people do wrong, it is from ignorance. They genuinely believe they were doing the right thing or the best thing, given their limited understanding. This encourages tolerance, or at least stops you from seeking revenge, because you recognize people act from their own subjective view, however flawed it might seem objectively.
And when the statement mentions the fixed rules of the universe, it's not just talking philosophy, is it? It feels more concrete.
Oh, definitely. It's clearly pointing to natural laws, physics, chemistry, biology, those principles that operate consistently, unchangingly, totally indifferent to our wishes or beliefs. The statement specifically says, people have evolved but not the universe. It draws this sharp line between our shifting human ideas and the constant reality of nature. Our different lifestyles, our different right ways of living, they all happen within these neutral, unyielding laws. Gravity doesn't care if you set an alarm right. It affects everyone equally.
And this idea, the universe is also right, could even have a spiritual feel for some people, couldn't it? That sense of everything happens for a reason, maybe.
It absolutely can resonate that way. While the source's language feels more secular, the sentiment could easily fit into a spiritual framework. Trusting a cosmic order, maybe a divine plan, it hints at this ultimate reconciliation, like from a cosmic viewpoint, everything is as it should be. Overall, this perspective pushes towards accepting reality, having a non-judgmental view of natural processes, including, importantly, human behavior. It does raise big questions about moral responsibility for sure, but its main drive seems to be understanding over condemnation.
Okay, so let's bring us down to earth. Beyond the big philosophical ideas, how does this actually affect us? How does it play out in our minds, in our societies, day to day?
Well, psychologically, the core idea, everybody is right, as per their own understanding, fits really nicely with what we call cognitive perspective taking. It's recognizing that everyone acts based on their perception, their beliefs, their history. There's that saying in conflict resolution, everyone is the hero of their own story. It doesn't mean their actions are objectively good, but understanding they felt justified. That can be huge for empathy. It can dissolve conflict. It's really a call for radical empathy, trying not to judge immediately.
That makes total sense. If you actually try to see it from their angle, even if it seems totally wrong to you, you might start to understand why it felt right to them then.
Precisely. And then sociologically, if you embrace everybody is right in their own way, you land right in the territory of cultural relativism.
Yeah.
Anthropologists like Ruth Benedict showed how what's seen as moral or right in one culture might be completely taboo in another. This view encourages tolerance for diversity. It pushes back against that narrow, my way is the only right way thinking. You see it reflected in everyday phrases now like, you do you, or live and let live. Especially for personal choices, lifestyle things like your alarm clock or social media habits, this relativistic stance feels pretty reasonable.
Now, that second part of the statement, everybody deserves everything the universe has to offer, that really sounds like it plugs straight into some popular self-help ideas, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It resonates strongly with things like the law of attraction, the abundance mindset, popularized by books like The Secret. These philosophies often start from the premise that the universe is just infinitely abundant. There's enough for everyone. And it will provide what you desire if you align your thoughts and actions positively. The source even mentions affirmations like, everyone deserves abundance. The universe has a limitless supply, if only they open up their minds.
But then there's that condition again. Have you done the hard work required? Do you deserve your best want? That adds a really significant layer of personal responsibility, right?
It really does. It shifts it from just wishful thinking to something more like a meritocracy or even a kind of karmic deal. The universe offers abundance, but you need to put in the effort. It echoes ideas like cosmic karma or even the old Protestant work ethic, effort leads to reward. And this ties into something psychologists call the just world hypothesis. That deep down, often unconscious belief that life is fundamentally fair and people get what they deserve.
That sounds like it could be motivating, but also maybe a bit risky.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. Believing the world is just can be incredibly motivating. It encourages responsibility, resilience, optimism, because you assume your efforts will pay off. But it's often called the just world fallacy because, well, reality doesn't always work that way. It can lead to victim blaming if someone's struggling. The assumption might be, well, they must not have been ready or didn't deserve better, which is often deeply unfair. And it can lead to crushing self-blame, too, if things go wrong for you. You might ignore external factors, bad luck, the economy, systemic problems, and just think it's all your fault.
So for our own mental well-being, this philosophy can cut both ways. It really depends on how we use it.
For sure. On the plus side, it can boost self-esteem, fuel ambition, give you a real sense of agency. And the non-judgmental part, that can genuinely improve relationships, reduce envy. But on the risky side, the everybody is right part, if misused, could lead to complacency. You might stop listening to feedback, justify bad habits by saying, well, it's right for me. And the deserving part, if taken too literally without nuance, could lead to that harsh self-blame we talked about when things inevitably go wrong sometimes. And crucially, if you take everybody is right without any limits, you risk justifying genuinely harmful behavior, which society just can't allow. Which brings us right to the critical question. Does this whole philosophy actually hold together logically? When we scrutinize it, is it coherent, or are there some serious holes?
That really is the key test, isn't it? What does right actually mean here? Because it seems slippery.
That's the core ambiguity. If right just means right for them, in their own understanding, then, okay, the statement is largely true. But it's also kind of tautological. I mean, think about it. People rarely intentionally do what they believe is wrong right. They usually have some reason, some justification that makes it seem right or necessary to them at that moment. So in that limited sense, yes, everyone is right in their own eyes, and that's a powerful prompt for empathy. However, just because someone thinks they're right doesn't make them objectively right about reality itself. If person A believes X is true and person B believes X is false, they can't both be objectively correct about X, especially if X is a matter of fact, like a scientific principle. If everyone is right implies we must accept all claims as equally valid objective truths, then it becomes dangerous. It denies empirical reality. This subjective rightness really only works well for things like personal values, tastes, opinions, not verifiable facts.
Okay, so fine for my alarm clock preference, maybe less so for whether gravity exists. And what about applying everyone is right to morality? What are the implications there?
Morally, this is where it gets really tricky. If you interpret everyone is right as a normative claim, meaning this is how things should be, we should regard all actions as right if the person felt justified, then you run into huge ethical problems. It would logically force you to condone terrible things, atrocities, exploitation, simply because the perpetrators believed they were right. Society cannot function, cannot protect people, if it treats harmful actions as morally equivalent to helpful ones just because of the actor's subjective feeling. Serious philosophies of relativism usually try to nuance this, maybe limiting rightness to cultural context or subjective feeling, not universal moral approval.
So this unqualified version seems to clash with some basic logic, like things can't be true and false at the same time.
It definitely bumps up against the law of non-contradiction if you take it absolutely literally. How can person A be right and person B, who holds the opposite view, also be right about the same objective thing? The main way around this is to implicitly shift the context. Person A is right for them, person B is right for them. So there's no direct contradiction within a shared objective framework, but it makes truth extremely subjective. Critics find this makes reasoned argument difficult. It's probably best seen as a tool for empathy, not a literal statement about objective truth.
Okay, and what about the other half? Everybody deserves everything. Is that grounded or is it wishful thinking?
Look, on a humanistic level, it's a beautiful, empowering statement. Everyone should have the opportunity for happiness, fulfillment, abundance. It fights against scarcity thinking, jealousy. That's incredibly positive. But if you take it literally, it's hyperbole. No one can have everything. And empirically, life just doesn't guarantee that hard work always leads to success. External factors, luck, systemic barriers, just plain bad timing, they absolutely exist. So yes, it can verge on magical thinking if you interpret universe too literally as some conscious entity just handing out rewards. But there's also a powerful psychological truth embedded in it. If you genuinely believe opportunities exist and that you are capable and deserving, you're much more likely to notice and act on those opportunities. It can even prime your brain, like the reticular activating system, to spot things relevant to your goals. So it's not all magic.
It feels like there's this tension, maybe even an internal contradiction baked into the philosophy itself then.
I think so. Consider this. If everyone is right, doesn't that imply that choosing not to work hard is also right for that person? Yet the philosophy insists you must do the hard work to deserve what the universe offers. This clearly values proactive, effortful behavior, even while claiming contradictory behaviors are equally right. It seems to swing between total personal freedom and a strong achievement ethic. Maybe the most generous way to reconcile it is, be tolerant of others' choices, but understand that for your own goals, effort is key. And finally, many philosophers like Bernard Williams have pointed out the dangers of extreme relativism. If everyone is right, it can lead to ethical paralysis. How do you condemn injustice? How do you argue for change? How do you even learn from others if every perspective is equally valid and unchallengeable? You could end up with a world of isolated everyone is right bubbles, unable to connect or solve problems together. For society to work, we need some shared standards laws, human rights, basic decency that go beyond just personal preference. And empirically, sure, the universe's rules are fixed, but our understanding of them isn't always right. If your understanding leads you to believe something factually untrue, like jumping off a cliff is safe, the universe will demonstrate the objective reality, regardless of how right you felt.
Okay, so after exploring all these different facets, what's the practical takeaway for us, the listener? Is this something to embrace or handle with care? What's the real-world impact for you? Where this philosophy really seems to shine, where it makes a lot of practical sense, is definitely in our interactions with others, interpersonal understanding. It really does push you towards tolerance, towards empathy. It can reduce prejudice if adopt that live and let live attitude for everyday differences. Recognizing someone else is right might just be different, not wrong. Well, that genuinely smooths out social friction, makes things more harmonious. And it's also incredibly potent for self-empowerment, isn't it? Telling yourself, I deserve what the universe offers, especially when you tie it to putting in the effort. That's uplifting. It fights those feelings of inadequacy, boosts self-esteem, and can genuinely motivate you to aim high, knowing that potential is out there. And the focus on doing the hard work to accept, that feels like practical advice. Prepare yourself mentally and physically to grab those opportunities when they come.
Absolutely. And thinking about resilience, accepting the universe's fixed rules helps you deal with things you just can't control. Unexpected problems, setbacks. You adapt instead of just getting angry. It can even lessen feelings like hatred or resentment by prompting you to understand why someone acted the way they did. Even if it hurt you, understanding they were acting from their perhaps flawed rightness. It really aligns with therapeutic ideas like acceptance and commitment therapy. Accept what is, then act on your values.
And for learning or teamwork, believing everyone has a piece of the truth seems like it would foster amazing openness, listening better, combining ideas.
Definitely. It encourages that integrative thinking. You get richer understanding, often more creative solutions, when you genuinely value diverse perspectives instead of just trying to prove your own point. But, and this is a big but, where the philosophy falls short can be really significant. We have to be aware of the downsides. If you take everybody is right too far without critical thinking, it can lead straight to ethical paralysis. Society needs to be able to identify certain actions as objectively wrong things like violence, exploitation, serious injustice, regardless of whether the perpetrator felt subjectively justified. A rigid application of this philosophy could make us unwilling to make those necessary moral judgments. And then there's the risk of just denying reality. If you constantly use "I'm right in my own understanding" to block out feedback, ignore evidence, or dismiss expert advice, you risk stagnating. You could make terrible decisions. At its extreme, it leads to a kind of solipsism, trapped in your own subjective bubble.
Right. And what about when things don't work out? You put in the hard work, you felt ready, but you still fail or face misfortune.
That's a huge potential pitfall. That universe will offer if you're ready idea, taken too literally, can lead to really harsh self-blame or deep disillusionment. If you fail despite massive effort, you might think, I wasn't deserving enough, or I didn't do it right, completely missing external factors, bad luck, systemic barriers, things totally outside your control. And sadly, it can also make people insensitive to others' suffering. The underlying thought might be, well, they must have attracted that or didn't deserve better, which is often just cruel and ignores reality. And lastly, its very strong individual focus can sometimes clash with the need for community and collective action. If the main concern is what the universe offers me and what's right for me, it can sideline thinking about shared well-being. Tackling big problems like climate change or pandemics or inequality requires shared norms, collective effort, and acknowledging that some individual actions, even if they feel right to the person, are harmful to the group.
So let's try and wrap this up. This really potent statement. Everybody is right as per their own understanding, held in tension with the universe's rules are fixed and always right. It clearly resonates through history, East and West. We've seen echoes in relativism, perspectivism, even modern self-help.
And at its best, it offers a genuinely compassionate and empowering perspective. It encourages empathy, humility, personal growth. It reminds us to try and understand why others' beliefs make sense to them.
But as we've definitely unpacked, it has real limitations if you take it too literally, too absolutely. It can become logically tangled, ethically problematic, and sometimes just doesn't match up with empirical reality or the complexities of social life.
Yeah, the bottom line isn't that it's nonsense, not at all. But it absolutely requires careful, nuanced interpretation. It's a great tool for navigating personal choices, fostering empathy, understanding different viewpoints, but it becomes problematic if you apply it uncritically across the board to objective facts, to necessary ethical standards, or as some kind of foolproof predictor of life outcomes.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If real wisdom involves recognizing that even our own sense of being right is probably partial, maybe always evolving, what's one small daily habit you could try to intentionally challenge one of your own deeply held right beliefs? What new understanding might that little bit of openness unlock for you?